This is called committed. Probably the worst thing about being a hypochondriac is the incessant feeling that my penis is bleeding. Why, I wonder? Couldn't that thing be like the rest of my organs, tucked safely away with other viscera in the hollows of my midsection, swathed in warm blood and protective skin? It could still behave like it always has, popping out at inopportune moments to say, "Hello, how are you?" But inside, it wouldn't be at the mercy of broken zippers or rough denim, the nemeses of the functionally insane. Instead, it just dangles there, outside, exposed and fragile. My wife and I were out to dinner the other night when she noticed me lifting my hands from underneath the tablecloth and casually turning my fingers into flickering candlelight, as if to quietly examine them. "Here," she whispered, "do you have to do that here?" I tried to explain that I had just returned from the bathroom and could have sworn the zipper on my jeans had behaved in a really untoward fashion, and so I had to inspect for damage. Dana put her fork down and leaned across the table. "You know those people who put their fingers in their armpits and smell them?" "Oh yeah, those people. Those people are freaks." "Anyway, why do you ask?" Being a hypochondriac is difficult enough. Being an obsessive-compulsive hypochondriac is downright frustrating. Because I never check on my condition just once or twice. If I believe some calamity has struck my underregions, well, let's just say paying so much attention to your pants in public can be a bit embarrassing. Over the years, I've come to realize that the rest of our relationship must be something really special, because Dana has apparently decided that sacrificing things like romantic candlelit dinners and pride is worth it. It pains me to imagine what other diners are thinking should they happen to glance over and see the tablecloth rhythmically dancing up and down, while my wife buries her head in shame. I always want to say something to clear the air, but what? "Oh, I'm not masturbating. I just think my penis is bleeding." When I'm not bleeding to death through my urethra, I'm usually having a heart attack. At Thanksgiving, I ran over to the emergency room before dinner, just like someone might run to the grocery store for a forgotten pie. At the hospital, the doctor assured me that nervous sweats, rapid pulse rate, and unbearable chest pain were nothing more than a sprained ankle. I cursed him on the way out, wondering how he'd feel if I collapsed in the emergency driveway. But this never happens, of course. I make it out of the hospital door, past the emergency driveway, down the block and back home. A rational person would probably pause for a moment and think it's silly. After all, how many people suffering from an actual heart attack manage to walk themselves to the hospital and then back home again an hour later? But by the time I get home, I've usually forgotten about my failing heart and am too busy stuffing my hands down my pants over and over again. Years ago, I had a series of panic attacks that sent me to the hospital. I said I couldn't breathe, and the doctor gave me an inhaler. A few hours later, I returned and said the inhaler made my heart race. So he prescribed a sedative, and a few hours after that, I returned yet again, complaining that the sedative made it difficult to breathe. It was a cruel cycle that went on for hours, and it occurred to me that the doctor had probably just diagnosed me as a hypochondriac, prescribed placebos, and sat back with his clipboard to enjoy the show. Then I wondered whether too many placebos could be fatal. And said, "You know what? Fuck this." And called an ambulance instead. By the time I finally arrived home, Dana welcomed me into bed, lifting the covers back so I could slip in, and then she rubbed my forehead until my chest relaxed and I fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. It sometimes makes me feel guilty to think of her tenderness. I get a cold and call in the World Health Organization, shouting into the phone, "Just send Sally Struthers!" Dana hardly ever complains of sickness. She handles these things with a measure of fortitude, as if she's never been on WebMD. So when she does come down with something serious and suggests that maybe she should go see a doctor, A lightning bolt of panic shoots through me, and it makes me realize how fully dependent one can become on another. In a few years, I'll have known her half my life, and sometimes my selfishness frightens me. She gets sick enough to seek help, and I wander around in a momentary daze, lost and wondering. If a measure of true love is discovering someone's weakness and remaining anyway, isn't it also knowing you've been made a better person by the other, and your world would crumble without her? People get married and take vows about in sickness and health, and probably have visions of occasional ailments or some distant time when one of them trips, breaks a hip, and starts yammering on about how that Matlock, he really gives it to him. Probably no one signs on for daily heart attacks, bouts of bleeding penises, and constant need for reassurance that no, hangnails cannot kill you. Half my life, how could one person be so lucky and another so cursed? A few hours before a date night with the sitter on the way, I could bear the pain in my chest no longer. I checked in with Dr. Google and the prognosis was dire. At the hospital, I fell into an ongoing casual debate with the triage nurse about which Law & Order franchise was best, while he stuck the EKG octopus tentacles to my exposed body. Normal, he said. Okay, well, see you tomorrow. Neither Dana nor I had called the sitter to cancel, and we ended up seeing a movie that night. I think we both assumed that I'd be back in under an hour, and life would resume as it had that day, and the day before, and the day before that. On the way home, stray beams of moonlight hit the sidewalk under my feet. The sound of slow footfalls on the concrete matched the sound of a measured, healthy pulse echoing in my ears. I couldn't help but feel depressed. Part of me always holds on to a glimmer of hope that maybe there's something seriously wrong. I don't want to suffer, God no. And as much as I'd like to point a finger and gloat, see, and you said this one wasn't serious, the rest of me just doesn't want to feel so crazy all the time. No, I wasn't planned, I swear. I make it home. I make it home and gently unlock the door. Our sitter is waiting on the couch. Dana is in the living room gathering her purse. Well, she says, are you going to make it this time? And standing there in the foyer, moonlight coursing silver and luminous through the window, I nod silently, feeling all at once exposed and fragile, and grateful for more time. Half my life, I think, poor woman.